Good morning, I'm Hans Hansen with Walter's Gardens here in Zeeland, Michigan, and this morning we are going to talk about Hellebores. So we have a pretty active breeding program here at Walter's Gardens where we have single Hellebores called the Honeymoon Series and double Hellebores called the Wedding Party Series. And here we have an example of the Honeymoon Series. This is Rome in red, part of the Honeymoon Series, and it's an example of a hybridous variety, which is a conglomeration of blending of several different Hellebore species. Hellebores, for the most part, are native to the Balkan region of Europe. And some interesting things about the Hellebores is predominantly the flowers face downward, and this is a survival mechanism. You can think of the sepals kind of like an umbrella, and when they face downward, they kind of shield the pollen from rain and moisture and keep it dry. So in the wild, you'll seldom see any that face upward, but we kind of select them for the side-facing varieties, so they kind of face the viewer, and it's easier to see the attractive center. We also work very hard to ensure the back of the sepals have the same color as the center, so that they're pretty by the front or by the back. We had a cold temperature this morning. We were 29, so you can see the plants kind of collapse a little bit in the cold, and then they perk up when it gets above freezing. These have been flowering for several weeks. In fact, a week ago yesterday we had snow, so these were covered in snow. They're very hardy. Plants will grow in zone 4 till 9, so I grew these in Minnesota when I gardened there. They're very long-lived, early spring, and probably my favorite perennial for early spring color. This is an example of a single black Hellebore. This is New York Night, and we've had snow the last couple days. You can see there's a little bit snow on the ground, so you've got quite a good color contrast between the black flowers and the white snow. A lot of these black Hellebores, when they come up out of this ground in the spring, will have really dark tinted foliage, almost the same color as the flower. So it's a very interesting color pattern, and I think to get the best show in the garden, these need to be sited alongside something with brilliant yellow foliage. So an example would be yellow heucheras. Here we have Carex everillo, which is a nice evergreen sedge, so you've got this nice color contrast. These are less advanced than the Rome in red because they're in deeper shade, but as the season progresses, the temperature warms up, the entire clump will probably double in size and have quite a long season of bloom. What you're seeing here is the terminal flowers, but most of these will have secondary lateral flowers and oftentimes tertiary flowers, so it'd be a long season of bloom. This is an example of a patterned Hellebore. So in the Honeymoon Series we have this one called Romantic Getaway, where from the back it appears to be white, but in the center of the flower is a nice red blotch. And the second thing I like to illustrate is these are evergreen plants, and the foliage has been tidied up probably a month ago. These come up very early, so there's a short window of time between cleaning up the evergreen foliage and the flowers coming through there and being really tender, and you've got to be very careful. But if you want a really good show for Hellebores, they really show to their advantage if you could plant them on a slope. So they're elevated a little bit here, and it really shows the interesting center of the flower. Here we are in the Hellebore breeding house. We have quite a number of greenhouse ranges that are 50 degrees. And like we had mentioned earlier, these Hellebore flowers open when it's very cool out. And what we are doing is cross-pollinating these flowers. So here we are at the seed block of Rio Carnival. And this is a beautiful yellow flower with a red center. And the pollination technicians are taking pollen from the pollen source, which is this little yellow dust, which is at the end of the anthers and is very ripened to hist. And what we do is we apply that pollen to the end of the stigmas, and most Hellebores have about 5 stigmas. And once the pollination has occurred, they take a black marker and put a line through it to make sure that that signifies that one has been pollinated and it is good. And in about 6 weeks, if the pollination is successful, the carpels will develop into seed pods, and develop into seeds. So there would be about 25 seeds per flower, and each year we have about close to 1 million seeds from our pollination program that are sold through the wholesale trade. We are in the Hellebore breeding house at Walter's Gardens, and I was going to walk you through a little bit about the steps involved for making new Hellebores on the market. So when you buy Mother of the Bride, they're all seedlings that are going to be very similar but not identical. So we would take pollen from a pollen donor, which would be identified by a flag, and take the yellow fluffy pollen, which is dehisced, and put it on the stigmas of the mother plant. And then in about 8 weeks, if the cross was successful, the seed pods would swell up looking something like this. And we would collect the seed and sow them immediately because they have a short shelf life before the seeds dry out. So they would be planted either in a 128 or 72 count, 1 seed per hole. And the seeds planted in the end of May, early June, sit throughout the summer, get cold stratification, so they would have about 8 weeks of cold temperature, and then early January they would emerge like this. And usually we have about 80% seed germination. These germinated early January and then were fed quite heavily. Our growers do a really good job of pushing these along. You can just see how well they receive. They're receptive to fertilizer, so we really have a nice dark green color. A lot of times they do a foliar feed in addition to the regular feeding, just to really give it a good nutrient charge. So from this to this is 1 calendar year. And this is usually what the customer would get, either a flat of 72s or a flat of 20s. When the 20 counts are vernalized and flower the next year, about 50 to 75% of them should flower with good cultural conditions. And then on down the line, the next size we have would be year 3. And from here to here, you can see a really drastic transformation. This is year 4, and this plant is 5 years old. And you can just see all the flowers you have on a 5-year-old plant. It just brings a lot of beauty and enjoyment into the garden. Our growers really do push these along with their fertilizer program. In the garden, you'd probably add another year to the progression of growth. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you'll enjoy Hellebores as much as I do. They're hardy in most parts of the country. They're deer and rabbit resistant, and they are really attractive in early spring.